Our mission statement has never changed. It's the Friends of Western Art promotes awareness of the art of the American West by providing sponsorship and the support to Western artists, artisans, educational programs, and art-related organizations in Tucson and Southern Arizona. That has never changed in 45 years. Jack really was our trail boss, and he was the ramrod for this organization. And I recall Jack saying, "You don't know where you're headed until you can acknowledge and appreciate where you came from." And I think that's the story of the Friends of Western Art. We always looked back, and we always looked forward. I think we need to talk about the future. And, you know, we have to keep our guard up. You know, evolution and adaptation for sustainability requires new challenges. And we are faced with challenges in that we've done the same thing for a lot of years. And we need to be looking at who are our members, what is our audience, who are the beneficiaries of what we do. We need to be talking about what we can do for our members that we haven't done before. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Can't believe that so many people came to listen to an old man tell lies. They are. You know, last fall, Barb called me and talked and asked if I'd speak on a First Tuesday and just provide some of the history and anecdotes and stories, and especially stories about our legendary leader, Jack Goodman. And I said, this is an easy job. But you know, as I started to lay out this information, I found that it became a story of resilience, adaptation, and an outstanding legacy for which we're all proud of. So it's been a great experience for me, and I hope I can share with you some of the things that we've endured in the past. But I wanted to bring you to attention that I brought an art print with me, which is framed, and it's going to be auctioned at the conclusion of this evening. And what's unique about this art print is it's the only publication of a very short-lived organization known as the Friends of Western Art of the Tucson Museum of Art. There is not another thing printed that has that name on it. The image itself is a W.H.D. Corner painting from the 1920s, and it was used for the Anschutz collection, which is one of the first things that we underwrote, and it was also the very first thing that created a blow-up with the Tucson Museum of Art. I'll get onto that later. But you know, we really can't talk unless we start out with the mission statement, because that tells us who we are and what we want to be. So our mission statement has never changed. It's the Friends of Western Art promotes awareness of the art of the American West by providing sponsorship and the support to Western artists, artisans, educational programs, and art-related organizations in Tucson and Southern Arizona. That has never changed in 45 years. Okay, here I go, but I'm going to give you a disclaimer first. I mean, this is a narrative. It's a recollection. There's many dates, individuals, and sequence events that have been lost to memory. And I apologize for anything that I've missed in advance. Okay? But I want to talk about Tucson and art of the mid-century era of the 20th century. You know, the post-war growth took Tucson from a community of 26,000 people to 125,000 in 1945. And this growth brought all these people here who found the Southwest and the sun and the way of life and what have you to be so intriguing that they were energized and wanted it depicted in certain ways. There was also an oil boom in Texas in which hard scrabble ranchers all of a sudden became multimillionaires and no longer had to herd their cattle, cut them, or do anything else, but they still wanted the vision of what was close to their heart. And so Western art went from being cowboys and Indians for the first half of that century, in which people downplayed it as being nothing more than historical illustrations, to became a romance art in which people wanted to climb into the painting itself and experience the cutting of the cattle, the chasing of this or that, or the roping and the beautiful sunsets and what have you. So this historical illustration became a genre for romance art. And look around the room and you can see exactly what I'm saying. You would love to climb into that frame and be there to experience the moment. So we have this whole new imagery and we have all these new people here. And the California and the Eastern art illustrators picked up on this very quickly. They could get a fee for illustrating a story in Saturday Evening Post or painting a cover, and all of a sudden some rich Texan wanted a picture of people on his ranch and a chuck wagon and what have you, and it paid a heck of a lot more. And so we had this migration of illustrators who came west, and Tucson was blessed that we got some of the best. And I wanted to bring attention to this particular painting because of the fact that this painting is, the subject are some of those illustrators that lived in Tucson. It was painted by John Soley, and it was done as an exercise here at the Mountain Oyster Club when these guys get together for lunch once a month. And Soley said, "I want to paint you," and he took some photographs in the basement, and he produced this painting. But you know, there's Howard Turpening and Harley Brown and what have you. The man in the black T-shirt is Michael Moore, and he was not an artist, but he was the creator of Dances with Wolves. But anyways, John Soley did this painting, and it's truly representational of these artists. And about a year or year and a half after giving it to the club, because they didn't know what to do with this, John asked me, he says, "Can I borrow the painting back?" He says, "I got to make some changes." And I said, "Certainly." But I had the presence of mind to take a photograph of it before he did it. And you will see, if you have not noticed, that he added 2 more people to the original painting. And you cannot tell the difference. But if you stand at an angle, you'll be able to see the varnish. And if you look at the key that I created, you will see where they were actually included, and it's absolutely ingenious. So here we have our artists. We've got a community that's ready for art. And here we go. But you know, the roots of the Friends of Western Art did not begin with the Mountain Oyster Club. It began with the Tucson Festival Society. And the Festival Society was founded in 1949. And it was an organization that was created in order to promote the traditions and the idealism of the Southwest. It was well funded. It received an allocation from the city of Tucson, had major sponsors. It created the Silver and Turquoise Ball, which is still going on today. And then 1973, Jack Goodman, who was a member of the board of directors of the Friends of Western Art, created the Artist of the Year program. And so this was well before we came on as the Friends of Western Art. So we had all of these events going on, and it was just great. It was a halcyon time. But you know, Jack Goodman, I would like to say, is the person that is behind all of this. And he was an interesting character. My relationship with him was that for more than 30 years, I had a voice that he could hear. He was terribly deaf. And so my job, no matter what organization we were in, was to sit his right-hand side and tell Jack what people are talking about and tell him when to stop talking because he was on a different subject. But I learned a great deal, and he was a very interesting person. He was diminutive in size. He was a very small man, but he probably was bigger than life. And when you looked at what he did, Jack came here in the late 1920s with his father, Barney, who was a middleweight boxing champion, married a Kansas City socialite, and Jack was his firstborn son, and he brought him west during the recession to toughen him up. And so he put Jack in one of the ranch schools here in Tucson, and that's where Jack found his love for horses and the West. In fact, became a passion with him. Jack eventually became a member of the Racing Commission in the state of Arizona, raised and bred a horse that won the Grand National in England. He was an excellent polo player and played regularly here in Tucson. And he was an individual who became a very avid Western art collector. So Jack was there at the very beginning, and he watched this transition in which we went from the historical illustrations and the Remington and the Russells to the more abstraction and the beautiful colors and what have you. And he grew with every single development that came along. So Jack really was our trail boss, and he was the ramrod for this organization. And I recall Jack saying, "You don't know where you're headed until you can acknowledge and appreciate where you came from." And I think that's the story of the Friends of Western Art. We always looked back, and we always looked forward. And we had something to say about it. I think a few stories are really appropriate about Jack right now. As I said, he was an excellent horseman. His father, Barney, was very successful during the Depression and the acquisition of real estate at the very worst times. In Tucson, he managed to acquire the Valley National Bank, the Santa Rita Hotel, all kinds of vacant properties, and the star of his portfolio eventually became the Hotel del Coronado on Coronado Island. So Barney was great. But you know, Jack always told me when he had a few cups, he'd say, "John," he says, "my dad, he died ringside at a fight with a blonde in mink coats on either side of him." And he said, "That's the way I want to go." But you know, he was just great. And one night I was here at the Mountain Oyster Club, and it was social hour in the bar and what have you. And there was a woman in a group, and she was talking about the hotel this and the hotel that and this and what have you. And Jack had this scrunched up, funny little face, and she looked at him and she said, "Have you ever been to the Dell?" And he said, "Not since I sold it." But I learned a lot from Jack, and I think one of the greatest things is he was very generous with artists, and he never haggled. But I was present with him when he was looking at a piece of art from a very young artist, and he was very new. And Jack said, "You know, I'll take this if I can put it over my mantle for 2 weeks to see if it fits." And this young man just really got really upset, and you could see he was agitated. And Jack looked at him and he said, "Young man," he said, "your painting would be like a billboard on a highway of Rolls Royces." And that young man had absolutely no problem giving him the 2 weeks credit. But you know, Jack, as I said, he taught me a lot of things. And the one thing that he told me is that every single artist, or even would-be artist, will create a masterpiece in their lifetime. He said the difference between being a collector and an investor is when you can identify the person that can do more than one masterpiece. But he always felt strongly that you look at anybody, not what they are, not what they represent, but what it is in front of you. And that was a very interesting thing to me, in that you don't collect for who somebody is, you collect for what it is. And it may not ever be recreated again, but it's art. You know, later, Jack was inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame for his contributions to Western art. And Carolyn and I had the privilege of going to Oklahoma City for the induction. And we drove because we wanted to spend a week on Highway 66 and see some of the old towns and things of that nature. And so we had a wonderful a weekend in which Jack was inducted, and he received a bronze statue of a cowboy on a horse. It was about this large, you know, that had his name and his recognition. And everybody in Jack's group had flown there, so this became problematic. So Carolyn and I were tasked on bringing the bronze home with us, and because we were spending our time dilly-dallying and what have you, we thought, where in the world is Waldo? We could do that. So the bronze came out to get a photograph wherever we went to cool places. But Jack, I think, was really shocked when he saw his statue in the Roswell Alien Museum. Yeah. But you know, my fondest and latest memory of Jack was his 95th birthday, because he was getting along and what have you. And I walked up to Jack, and put my arms around him, and I said in his ear, I said, "Happy birthday, old man." And he just looked back at me and goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Jack, only the good die young." And he says, "Well, in that case, call me when you're 95 and I'll buy you a drink." So that was our illustrious leader. Jack was legendary. I think all of us who knew him miss him. And those that you never met him, wish you would have met him, because he certainly was somebody that was present in all of his life. I do have one more recollection, and that was we had a member of the Friends of Western Art by the name of Geraldine Diefenbach. And Geraldine was a very beautiful, vivacious, funny lady. And for whatever reason, Jack could never figure out Geraldine. And it just bothered him to no end. And he kept saying to me, "Do you know anything about Geraldine?" And I said, "No, you know," and he just wanted more information. Finally, I said, "Jack, ask her." So he walks up and he says, "Geraldine, who are your people?" And she goes, "Jack, what do you mean? My tribe, my family?" You know, she got them all flustered. And Jack was afraid to ask any further, but he'd wander around asking people what they knew about Geraldine, and she was just a great lady, and a bit crazy too. Those of you who were in the bar the night that Geraldine got a divorce, and saw her attempt to get on the top of the bar and do a strip, realizes that she was quite the lady, but she was prevented. But Geraldine sadly developed pancreatic cancer, and she was so optimistic all the way to the end. And in spite of all of this with Jack, she presented him with a plaque which now hangs on the east end of the building in the back. It's a large three-dimensional plaque that says John K. Goodman, horseman, philanthropist, friend of Western artists, and founder of the Mountain Oyster Club. And so it's a great little plaque to see in the back. It really is. Okay, let's get to the Friends of Western Art. You know, this all started prior to us becoming the Friends. It was a group around 1978 that decided that we could help the Tucson Museum of Art as volunteers, as long as the theme and the ideas were Western related. The initial people were all Jack's old polo playing buddies. We had Bill Harmson, Cal Rainey, Joe Meyerhauser. We had Gordon Cox, Arnold Krause, Floyd Settlemeyer, George Masick. They were all Mountain Oyster Club members. And so this was the first cinch in the knot that binds the Friends of Western Art and the Mountain Oyster Club. These were all Mountain Oyster members. They were horsemen, and they wanted to really promote Western art. So in 1981, 82, we incorporated as the Friends of Western Art of the Tucson Museum of Art, and immediately went out and opened up a checking account without thinking of asking anybody from the Tucson Museum of Art to be co-signers, which became a great deal of consternation on their part, and probably one of the reasons why we had such an early split. But Jack was granted the one board seat for the Friends of Western Art, but he was already a member of the board of directors. And the board was requiring an approval of all expenditures, and so they were looking at the Friends of Western Art as being an advisory board as opposed to an independent organization that would be a service corporation to their goals and means. As I said, the bank account was secured the moment we incorporated, and Aline Goodman became secretary, and she became secretary for life. No, there were no minutes that got past Aline, let me tell you. So what we did is we decided we needed to get going. I called Dwayne Bryers and asked him if he could do a logo for us. And Dwayne really came through. He did it right in front of me. He says, "John, I got a great idea," and he did 3 vertical bumps and then a horizontal half bar, and there you go, right there, Friends of Western Art. But he did it with a brush and brown oil, and he just went, and so it just flowed. And unfortunately, that got forced into a very mechanical representation. But I'd love to throw a challenge out to our artists and say, can we go back to the old logo, and can some of you take a brush and try the sweeping Friends of Western Art so that we could have a little pizzazz and panache? I'd love to see it. Yeah. Our early board meetings that we rotated between members' homes. And it was kind of interesting. We came up with a keeper of the liquor, and that we had a well-established reservoir for wine and beer and what have you. And one individual was tasked on dragging this to every place that we had a meeting, and it went on for years. And our annual meetings were kind of interesting in that we held them at somebody's home, rented some chairs, got some pasta, and had the bar, and that's what we did. Things have changed a long, long way since then, thanks to Beth. But the very first thing that we addressed was the Corbett House, and that the Friends made an obligation to provide $300,000 for the restoration of a corner of the building, in which we were allowed to name as the Goodman Pavilion of Western Art, and that name would remain for 25 years. That has now expired, and I don't know whether it's still called that or not. I doubt it. But it was kind of hard. And probably the very first exhibition we had was an Olaf Weekhorst retrospective. Now, Olaf was an early member of the Mountain Oyster Club. He was also a well-known Western artist. He was a retired New York mounted policeman who came west and started painting, and his knowledge of horses was second to none, so that at the time of his height, Western art went Remington, Russell, Weekhorst. And the very first painting that the Mountain Oyster Club acquired for its own collection is right over there, right in the back on the top of the cowboy roping neck calf, and that's called M.O. on the hoofs. And the way that we acquired that is in 1972. There was a movie being made in town. It was called Pocket Money, starring Lee Marvin and Paul Newman. And in fact, one of our own, and now deceased, but Helen Sanders' husband, Doc, had a speaking part in the movie. And they needed the bar at the old Pioneer Hotel, and they rented it for $800 a day for 3 days. And we took that money and induced Olaf to do the painting. And so that is painting number 1 for the Mountain Oyster Club, and at the start of its collection. Our second endeavor was Sam Campbell, who was a longtime member of the Mountain Oyster Club, passed away, and his estate was left to Benoit College and to the Tucson Museum of Art. And the Friends of Western Art took it upon themselves to auction for the benefit of the Tucson Museum of Art and Benoit College 30 paintings that went to the Tucson Museum of Art to be housed in the Goodman Pavilion. Our second was a week course retrospective at the Manning House, and then that was followed by a black tie dinner at the Arizona Inn, and we all loved it, except for the Tucson Museum of Art. They said no more retrospectives. It just didn't meet with their priorities. The Anschutz Masterpieces of the American West was the next exhibition that we had, in which the Friends completely underwrote the exhibition in terms of the acquisition and disposition of the art to get it to Tucson. It was a very successful thing, and in fact, there's the print. I did that, and half of the edition went to the Tucson Museum of Art to sell while the exhibition existed, and the other half went to the Friends of Western Art to give to its membership and to use as a membership inducement item. So, but the problem that we had was the museum had the expectation that all the costs associated with the installation and maintenance of the art would be underwritten by the Friends of Western Art. And our position was, you have staff, they're paid on an annual basis. It's their job to take down exhibitions and put exhibitions up. This became a very, very strong rub, which never went away. So with that, we decided to reincorporate, split. It was done very easily. We didn't have to reincorporate. All we did is do a name change. Friends of Western Art. We just dropped the other half. and off we went. We did very simple things. We didn't have a lot of funds. We didn't have a lot of spending to do, but we were continually searching for something. And then in 85, 86, the Pima County Courthouse came into play. The county was really anxious to get rid of the classic courthouse, and their idea was that it would be a great museum, a Western Art museum. And the Friends of Western Art really picked up on it, and we said, this is our cup of tea. We're bricks and mortar people. We're not operational people. And we decided that one great thing that we could do is not only raise the funds for the acquisition of the building, but we had a member that had the collection that was worthy of the building itself. And that was Bill and Dorothy Harmson. Bill was an interesting guy, and that he was an American Airlines pilot. And he and his wife owned an ice cream store in Golden, Colorado called the Jolly Rancher. And during the winter time, when the store was closed, his wife would make candy and fudge for the springtime. And Dorothy invented watermelon hard candies, the Jolly Ranchers. And with that, the company was promptly sold to Hershey's. Bill and Dorothy retired to Tucson, and Bill said, I want to gain a piece of art for every one of the Taos artists. But he couldn't stop there. I mean, what's 9 paintings? So Bill went at it with a vengeance. He took a Greyhound bus, had it converted, and it was his art bus. And I mean, it had red carpet and paintings on the walls and what have you. And he and Dorothy traveled all over the Southwest buying art. And which I can't really understand is they lived up in the foothills, and Bill housed his Greyhound bus in a barn, catty-corner to his home. And it was his man cave. He had his rug collection there. He had the bus backed in, and he had tons of candy that he handed out to anybody. My children were always small, so I always found an excuse to have some business with Bill and what have you. But when it came down to it, Bill had over 3,000 pieces in his collection. He had an incredible rug collection. He managed to collect all of the cowboy artists after taking on the Taos artists. And then Bill was doing a lot of experimentation. And the one thing that I remember that blew my mind is I was up there at his home, and he says, John, come on up here. I want to show you something. And he goes into his bedroom, and he pulls the coverlet over so you can look underneath. And he says, look down there. And I look down there, and there's dozens and dozens of 100-ounce bars of silver. And he was trying to corner the market when the Hunt brothers and you remember that were. So Bill had all of this stuff, and he didn't know what to do with it because the price of silver had sank. So he spent a great deal of time finding bronze artists who were willing to use their molds to recast in solid silver. So all of that was included in Bill's collection. Well, we struggled with this for years, and later we had the Great Western Art Auction, in which Jack Goodman and I solicited, I think, around 60 artists who donated paintings to be auctioned to provide the seed money for the acquisition of this building and its improvements. And we raised, I think, around $110,000, $120,000. And then things just fell through the roof. The museum said they were no longer interested in the museum. They felt the operational costs would be too much, and unless somebody was willing to endow them with the expenses, they had no interest in this. And so that disappeared, and sadly, Bill's collection went to the Denver Museum of Art. And what's even sadder is the Anschutz collection, which only amounted to about 800 pieces, was dwarfed by Bill's 3,000 pieces. But because it was already installed in the museum, it went to one of their off-site museums in a shopping center. So. Very sad, but we could have had, I think, a facility here that would have been a destination in terms of art. We did a lot of other things that we tried to do to help the museum. In 1991, Jack attempted to put together an exhibition and sale at the Tucson Museum of Art that would generate income for them, and also be a seed for what would be a female equivalent to the Cowboy Artists of America. And this was called the American Women Artists in the West, And for 4 years, the Friends of Western Art underwrote it, supported it, selected the artists, and actually worked the floors and did everything for the museum, including underwriting the printing of the brochures and invitations and what have you. But the museum was really not interested in having an art show and sale on an annual basis. And sadly, that great idea died. So there was a great deal of frustration going on between the Friends of Western Art and the Tucson Museum of Art, in which we were constantly seeking and trying to get a position with somebody that could hear our message and listen to our pleas and accept our ideas and help to provide them. But it was not to be. But coming along, so what we had is we had this $110,000 because of the fact that the money was earmarked and promised to the artist to be for a specific person. We felt that we could only use the interest from that. And so the income for the Friends of Western Art was really very, very modest. We only had $10,000, $12,000 worth in income and memberships, and we had a lot of demand in terms of people that needed facilities, art, instruction, scholarships, materials, and what have you. Then going back to the Tucson Festival Society, it had run its course in the late 1990s. We had a 50-year run. It was great. But like any organization, people get tired. It's the same thing every year, what have you. It was time to leave. And so because of their connection with the Friends of Western Art and the fact that it was really the Friends who assisted them in one of their major fundraisers, the Artist of the Year, they closed the books, turned the Artist of the Year dinner over to the Friends of Western Art, and for the next 11 years, we continued that event. And that was a black tie and cowboy boots event in which the honored artist donated a painting, which was live auctioned, and we had a silent auction, and it was about a $20,000 to $30,000 a year net program. But again, with that, it became old. And there was the dinners were actually diminishing in terms of revenue and what have you. But we continued to be able to do a lot. I mean, 1988 and for the next 6 years, we had a horse-drawn art exhibit at the La Fiesta de los Vaqueros, in which everybody had a great deal of time decorating it, what have you. It'd be kind of fun to do it again. I think to have a horse-drawn event. We also underwrote 3 major bronzes in this community. We had the Visions of Change for John Coleman, Buck McCain's Soldats, and Dan Bates' Trumpeter. So that was great. We also spent a great deal of time giving out very small scholarships to people, young people and what have you, to the Scottsdale Artist School, a lot of other things and what have you. In 2005, we went to Silver City, New Mexico, to my home, and there was an art walk that weekend, and we had a busload of people and had a wonderful time. We did a lot of traveling in those days, in which Dick Huff was our travel master, and he was Richard Huff Realty, and Dick just loved to organize trips in which we'd go and look at exhibitions in Phoenix and what have you, and it was a party bus situation, and everything was fine except for Dick insisted that we all sing, and you know how that goes. But so it was a very small, personable organization in which we had just a great deal of fun. In 2008 was really a turning point in this organization in which we began to get tired. And we could see that things were waning in terms of activities and sponsorships and things of that nature. And at the same time, because of the fact that we were not supporting the Tucson Museum of Art financially, they went ahead and created their own organization, the Western Art Appreciation Group, which was really designed to be something that would be different than the Friends of Western Art. So in 2008, it actually got to the point that there was a vote at the Friends of Western Art in a meeting as to whether we should just throw in the blanket and mold ourselves into WAP and go our way. And that failed by one vote. And then I was asked, I was not on the board then, I was asked to come back to see whether we could resurrect the organization or whether we really should just fold up the tent and call it quits. So in 2010, I became president. My first order of business was to have a meeting with the Tucson Museum of Art, and I gave them an agenda that do you have that that we can put up in front? This is what I sent the brand new director of the Tucson Museum of Art and said we'd like to have a meeting. And I think I spelled it out right there as to who we were, what we wanted to do, and what we could do for you. And Aline Goodman, Cynthia Cobb, Barney Lynch, and myself went to that meeting with Robert Knight. And after having a very nice discussion, they said, we'll get back to you, and we never heard again. So, but I think the reason that this is so interesting is that 15 years ago, our vision and what we wanted to do is exactly the same thing we're doing today. We're just doing it on our own. You know, it was really interesting. The difference between these two organizations was that the Western Art Appreciation Group, like us, were philanthropic, except for they were dedicated to supporting one cause, and that was the operations of a museum. We're philanthropic, and we are dedicated to supporting Western art, Western artists in general. And that is the key. That is the key. We maintain that financial independence, that we could look at anything that is going to further what we believe, we can take care of it. And so that's been really important. As far as education, again, theirs was self-education. They wanted to go on the tours and what have you. We looked at education as educating others, children, you know, people that aspired to be artists. And we did an awful lot in that area. The one thing I failed to mention is one of the things that we inherited from the Tucson Festival was the fourth grade writing and art contest. And in the fourth grade in the state of Arizona, every child learns about the state of Arizona, the Constitution, and they're required to write an essay about Arizona and to provide a drawing that has to do with this. The Friends of the Tucson Festival Society asked us at the very onset to judge these things, and there'd be over 2,000 pieces of paper and in pencil, in which you got cowboys and Indians shooting at each other, from hillsides, and maybe a lizard or a tarantula, but we would judge them because it wasn't for us to say what should be done. And one of our early board members, Major General Ben Pokia, who was a war hero in the Armored Division, but a navigational artist, could not understand how any child could believe that every saguaro had arms that were opposing each other at 180 degrees. The perspective just drove him nuts. Well, thank God for Michael back here, Michael Ewing. Michael forever has done everything he can to elevate that for the children. He secured volunteers who went into the schools to teach some of with the teachers, the children, and some of the things they could do for the fourth grade art participation. And we also provided supplies and what have you. And if you saw the latest bulletin from the Friends of Western Art and you saw some of the images the teachers sent in as to what their children were doing, these fourth graders are just absolutely amazing artists. But we have Michael to thank for that. He also handled all of our scholarship requests, and we got involved with the Congressional Art Competition that went on for years, and it's just been an amazing process in which we have elevated so many people that many of these are now professional artists. Let's see, what do I... Well, there was a 5-year period in there in which I had the privilege of being a president of two of three organizations that I felt very close to. I was president of the Mountain Oyster Club, the Friends of Western Art, and the Ameren Foundation. And I have to say that I'm not the least bit embarrassed to say that I sometimes exercised a conflict of interest because I felt there was a greater interest in these organizations being much closer together than they have been. And so it's been one of the most gratifying times in my life. But I was able to introduce the Friends of Western Art to the Ameren Museum because I felt if it wasn't the Tucson Museum of Art, here's an institution that will listen to us and hear our prayers. So the very first thing that I came to the Friends of Western Art in terms of request on behalf of the Ameren was interesting in that one day I was down in the storage area at the Ameren, and I saw this elk hide nailed on the wall in the building. And I said to John Ware, the executive director, "Is that what I think it is?" And he said, "What do you think it is?" And I said, "It's a story blanket." And so we went and looked at it, and it was an elk hide that had been drawn with paints of Indians in action, hunting buffalo, butchering, and what have you. The significance of that is that these story robes probably are the genesis of Native American art that was non-functional, meaning this was made and designed to be looked at rather than to be worn. The unfortunate thing is the thing had been hanging on the walls for 20-some years, was brittled, and was not fit to be seen. The Ameren got some quotes from Santa Fe, and I brought that, and we provided a grant for the restoration of that, which is now proudly displayed behind glass in the Emerald. And as I said, it clearly represents the genesis of Native American art. It's beautiful. It was done by Chief Washakie. I believe there was a Blackfoot around the time of the Columbian exhibition. And if you needed to replace it today, it would probably be $250,000, $300,000. So it was a wonderful find in the storage. Our second activity was that we provided a grant for Linda Morris, who was one of our members of the Friends of Western Art, to assess the condition of the two-dimensional art in the Emerald. And she was a professional art restorer. And she came up with this, and we looked at what the most critical things were and decided that we should provide a grant for the restoration of those materials. But the interesting thing was we were allowed to seek volunteers from our own organization to assist her in the restoration of the work. So we had members of the Friends of Western Art who could take a sack lunch, go to the Emerald, work for Linda, learn how to restore art, and what have you. It was a wonderful learning experience that I would love to see us to get back into doing, and that is the hands-on of art restoration. Linda, by the way, restored the art panels at Panama Canal when we turned that property over in the 1960s. So she did that for the U.S. government. It was a 2-year project. We also stuck our neck out and went in other directions, which was really great, and that the Emerald had received an Apache basket that the suspicion was that it was maybe the last or only piece of free-roaming Apache basketry there was. It was found in a cave near Douglas in the early 1900s, and the Friends of Western Art underwrote the restoration of that, and that's encased in plastic and is promptly displayed in that museum with a note that the Friends of Western Art underwrote that. We then went on and made a major commitment in that we underwrote a naming situation for the Friends of Western Art in the museum itself. And with it, the Friends were given the rights to have a 5-year annual exhibition of Friends art at the museum. And I think that's 12 years ago now. We're on our 5-year program. It's probably one of the highlights of our season is when we go down to see the artwork that the Friends have selected for this particular thing. And the great thing about it is this artwork is selected by us rather than third parties or what have you. It's what we like, what we see, and what we own. So I think that's been a major thing in which we've had this participation with this group. Well, we've I'm not done, but I'll wrap it up. I think we need to talk about the future, and we have to keep our guard up. Evolution and adaptation for sustainability requires new challenges. And we are faced with challenges in that we've done the same thing for a lot of years. And we need to be looking at who are our members, what is our audience, who are the beneficiaries of what we do. We need to be talking about what we can do for our members that we haven't done before, such as collecting. How do we collect? How do we select? How do we grade our collections? Conservation. How can we conserve what we got? how can we put philanthropy into our personal lives now that we're mature collectors? How do we deal with valuations, family planning, and there's just a lot that we have to do. These are all new challenges. I hope they're going to be new programs. I think that we could come up with some great ideas that would interest a lot of people. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up by saying, if it wasn't for the Fulfer family and the Smoky Springs Ranch, and coming up with a whole new way that we raise money and have a great time, the annual meeting is by far the best. Thank you, Beth. Okay, this guy wants to cut me off, but do you have any questions, or would anybody like to provide a Jack Goodman story?
I'd love to do a Jack Goodman story, but I didn't know. What are your challenges to the group here for the next 20 years?
Well, I think I just did it. I think we have to look at the next step that we have as collectors, and that is, how do we care for our collections? How do we deal with family planning and things of that nature? You know, and I'm very much involved in this at 82. I'm trying to downsize in my life. But the one thing that I've recognized, and what Jack taught me, was that great collections, great museum collections, come from the constant contribution of artwork from its supporters, in which the art can either high grade the collection itself, or the work is disposed of in a way that it enhances the collection. And so I think that all of us have an opportunity to be able to help those institutions by looking at what we're doing, selecting what we want to focus in on the way of our personal collections, and then allowing these institutions to generate revenue that is going to support the collection that they have, or can enhance it. And I think that's the ultimate in the maturity of a collector.
But his children get first dibs.
Okay. Touche. John?
So where does the MO fit into this relationship as far as collections?
The MO doesn't fit in any way other than the fact that it's really hard to separate the Friends of Western Art and the Mountain Oyster Club. We're all like-minded people. And we have the one thing in common, is the appreciation of this art. We truly believe and love Western art. The thing is, the Mountain Oyster Club, I think, was the impetus to get the Friends of Western Art up and off the ground. We feel, as members of the Friends of Western Art, that this is as much our clubhouse as it is the Mountain Oyster Club. The annual Friends of Western Art preview of the art show previews that of the actual members of the club itself, to show you just how important we feel that the Friends are to the Mountain Oyster Club. So we have this symbiotic support going on. Hard to distinguish.
John,
Yes.
one other thing. Everybody in here, go get another friend and join. I'm the heat-seeking missile. I have been.
Okay.
Yes.
So my
Okay.
thing is that
You have to stay here for a
Okay.
join this, you're having a wonderful evening. Tell your friends and be a part of it, because we are it for the kids. The kids don't have that. They have the cell phones and everything else. They aren't even teaching cursive writing anymore. Get the art back in there. Get the art. Is it the best thing? Is it?
Okay. It's okay?
I'll never quit.
John, we know that you think that you were here just to tell stories and share history with us, but we have something for you.
Thank you.
a Distinguished Service Award from the Friends of Western Markets.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. For those of you can't see it, that's a fishing rod and creel. I think they know what I like.
And the mesquite base was made by our friend Chris Gabriel.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your leadership and your service to this organization.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.